Hey there, media gurus. Ready to dive deep into A-level media studies?
Let's do it.
Today, it's all about exam prep, getting you confident to tackle those 5 key areas: media language, representation, audience, industry, and media context.
We've got a great example to unpack today.
Yep, we're looking at San Junipero, that award-winning episode from Black Mirror.
You know, it's sci-fi, it's a romance, but with a real twist.
So let's get those media brains buzzing.
It's fascinating how San Junipero plays with genre.
Okay, how so?
I mean, it's sci-fi, of course, but
Yeah.
you also get these elements of period pieces, a bit like those 80s teen movies.
Yeah, I see that.
And even hints of classic LGBTQ plus coming-of-age stories all mixed in.
It's like a genre milkshake. But why is that mix so important?
Well, for one thing, it's exactly what you need to understand for your exams.
Right, makes sense.
Knowing how those genre conventions work and how creators twist them for effect.
So it's more than just, like, a cool surprise for the audience.
Absolutely. Remember Steve Neale?
Vaguely.
He argued that genres need difference to stay fresh, to keep things interesting.
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
think about it. If every sci-fi was all doom and gloom, dystopian stuff.
Yeah, it would get old pretty fast.
Exactly. But San Junipero, it throws in nostalgia,
Yeah.
this heartwarming love story.
And those thought-provoking questions about virtual reality.
Right. It breaks the mold, keeps viewers hooked.
And that's what examiners want to see.
Exactly. Connecting those dots between theory and real-world example.
Okay, I'm getting it. It's not just about spotting the genres.
Right.
It's about why the creators did it and how that affects us as viewers.
That's the key.
So, media language, the first thing on our list today.
Right.
Talking about more than just what happens, right?
Yeah.
It's how the story is told.
Exactly. All the tools and techniques at play. Think about the music in San Junipero.
Oh, yeah, those 80s tunes.
Belinda Carlisle, Living in a Box. Pure 80s vibes.
For sure. But it's doing more than setting the scene, right?
Way more. It adds those layers of meaning about escaping reality.
And finding connection in the virtual world.
Right? And this is what you'll be doing in your exams. Picking apart details like this.
So why that specific song? What feeling does it give the audience?
Exactly.
Oh, I see. It's like those songs are practically characters themselves,
You got it.
adding to that emotional punch.
And what about the costumes?
Oh, good point. You've got Yorkie with that kind of awkward vintage style.
And then Kelly's rocking that Janet Jackson look.
Yeah. It's like their clothes tell us about them before they even speak.
Visual storytelling at its best.
I'm getting inspired to rewatch with my media studies brain on.
That's the spirit. And remember, those details are gold for your exams.
Okay, good to know.
Examiners want to see you using terms like mise en scène.
Right. The arrangement of everything on screen.
You got it. And explaining how it all contributes to the meaning.
So, we've cracked media language, but what about the deeper messages?
Now we're getting to representation.
Yeah, representation, a biggie for the exams, too.
It's about how media portrays the world, whose voices get heard.
And whose voices are left out.
Exactly. San Junipero tackles this head-on, especially with gender and sexuality.
Right. They show a same-sex couple.
Mackenzie Davis and Gugu Mbatha-Raw, a powerful choice by Charlie Brooker.
It felt so groundbreaking when it came out.
Especially back in 2016.
But it's not just about ticking boxes for diversity, right?
Definitely not.
I mean, Yorkie and Kelly's relationship, it's portrayed as genuine, healthy.
Absolutely. And that's important because it challenges those harmful tropes.
The ones we often see with LGBTQ plus stories.
Right. Remember Bell Hooks and her work on patriarchal power?
Yeah.
She argues that society often forces women into these limited roles.
Right, see that.
But San Junipero offers an escape from that.
Creates a space for love and acceptance.
Exactly. And where women get to choose their own destinies.
That's something worth mentioning in your exams, for sure.
Showing you can connect those big ideas to San Junipero.
Yeah, good point. It's like the episode is saying, hey, here's a glimpse of what could be.
Powerful stuff. It also makes me think of Judith Butler's work on gender as performance.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, even in this virtual world, our characters choose to express themselves as women,
Yeah?
but their relationship reflects that fluidity of sexuality.
It's a beautiful blend of individuality and connection.
And you know, this episode sparked important conversations.
I remember that.
Critics loved it.
And the LGBTQ plus community found it really resonant.
Right, it shows the power of authentic storytelling.
That reflects the complexities of being human.
Absolutely, and that's something you can always talk about in your exams.
The impact a show has on its audience. The wider conversation.
Exactly. So we've seen the media language, the representation.
But who's receiving all this? The audience, right.
You got it.
How does a show like this, San Junipero specifically, connect with people?
Well, that's another key area for your exams. Think about Stuart Hall's reception theory.
Okay, remind me about that one.
Different people, different readings. Some will embrace Brooker's warnings about tech.
And others might just enjoy the romance.
Right, but question that happily ever after in virtual reality.
It's like a choose-your-own-adventure for meaning.
Exactly. And don't forget about fandom. That's Henry Jenkins's territory.
Oh yeah, the fans.
San Junipero really resonated, especially with LGBTQ plus audiences.
Makes sense.
Fan art, fan fiction, they're taking it beyond the screen.
It shows the power of authentic representation.
For sure.
Okay, before we move on, what's the key takeaway about understanding the audience for exams?
Remember, examiners want to see that you get the complexity of audience engagement.
Right.
How things like age, gender, cultural background.
All of that shapes how people respond.
San Junipero is perfect for showing this. Those different interpretations, passionate fan responses.
It shows the power of media.
To connect with us personally.
Okay, but who makes this magic happen?
Now we're going behind the scenes to the media industry.
Lights, camera, money. Another big topic for those exams.
Black Mirror itself is a great case study here.
Okay.
It started on Channel 4 in the UK, then Netflix got involved.
Right. Bigger budget, global reach.
Exactly. Remember Hesmondhalgh and his ideas about cultural industries?
Vaguely.
He argued that media production is shaped by this interplay of creativity, economics, technology.
Right.
And Black Mirror is a perfect example.
So Netflix gave Brooker more freedom?
Possibly.
Is that why the later seasons feel a bit different?
Maybe. It's about balancing creative vision with commercial success.
Right. I can see that.
Netflix, they're subscription-based.
Yeah.
They can take more risks than ad-driven channels.
Makes sense. And Black Mirror went from cult classic to international phenomenon.
Thanks, in part, to Netflix.
Before we move on to media context, any advice on analyzing the industry for exams?
Go beyond just saying what happened.
Right.
Analyze why.
Okay.
Like with Black Mirror moving to Netflix, don't just state the facts.
Yeah.
How did that shift impact the budget, the audience, the creative freedom?
Oh, I see.
What does it tell us about power in media?
Good point.
Those are the questions that will make you shine.
Okay, we've covered media language, representation, audience, the industry.
Now it's time for media context.
This one can feel a bit academic, right?
It's really about the world around the media.
Okay, yeah.
Let's think about San Junipero again. It aired in 2016. What was going on then?
Well,
LGBTQ plus rights were a huge topic.
yeah, true, still are.
Brooker centering a same-sex romance, that wasn't just a creative choice.
Right.
It reflected the times, part of a larger conversation.
Adds another layer, doesn't
You
it?
sure?
It becomes more than just entertainment. It's a conversation starter.
Makes you wonder, how would San Junipero be received today in 2024?
Good question.
It highlights another aspect of media context, technology.
Right, technology.
VR was booming in 2016. Now we've got the metaverse.
True.
San Junipero feels even more relevant today.
Wow, so much to think about. What's the most important thing about media context for exams?
Think of it as a web of interconnected factors.
Okay.
You've got the social and political climate, technology.
And those cultural values.
Right, shaping how we see the world. All these influence both how media is made and how we receive it.
Right, like why this story now?
Exactly. So when analyzing San Junipero, don't just look at the episode itself.
Right.
Zoom out. The world around it shapes its meaning and its impact.
I love that. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground.
Oh, yeah.
Before we move to part 2, where we'll get even more practical for exams,
Yes.
what's one final thought you want to leave our listeners with?
Media studies is all about critical thinking.
Right.
Questioning assumptions, exploring media's power in the world.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to engage with those big ideas, challenge those narratives.
Use your voice.
Exactly. You've got this. Okay, let's shift gears a bit.
Sounds good.
We've covered a lot of ground, the key areas of media studies.
Yeah, we have.
But now let's get practical, talk exam strategy.
Right, exam strategy.
You've got all this knowledge about San Junipero, media language, representation, the whole shebang.
But how do we actually use it for those A-level questions?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
Because memorizing theorists and terms, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But showing the examiners you can actually think about media, that's the key to those top marks.
It is. It's like Knowing your stuff versus showing it.
Exactly. One of the most important things is understanding those assessment objectives.
Assess some objectives.
They lay out exactly what skills you need to demonstrate. It's like a roadmap for success.
So you know where to go and how to get there.
Exactly. So it's not enough to just know your stuff.
Right.
You've got to know how to show you know it.
It's like the difference between baking a cake and presenting it beautifully.
Perfect analogy. Now let's think about the types of questions you might get.
Okay.
How to tackle them head on. Imagine you're given a clip from San Junipero
Okay.
and asked to discuss how the creators use media language to establish setting and create nostalgia.
Ooh, interesting.
Where would you even begin?
Let's see.
Yeah,
I'd watch the clip carefully.
of course.
Jot down key details, things like costumes, the props, the colors, the lighting.
All those visual cues.
Then I'd think about those media language terms like mise-en-scène, iconography, sound design.
Yeah, all the good stuff.
For example, I might talk about how the warm colors and soft lighting create that hazy summer day feeling,
Nice.
that nostalgic atmosphere.
Excellent. Thinking like a media studies pro already.
Ah, thanks.
Don't forget to connect those visuals to the episode's themes.
Okay, right.
You could mention how those vintage arcade games, those 80s fashion choices, they don't just transport us back in time.
It's deeper than that.
They suggest a longing for simpler times.
Right, that yearning to escape.
Which many of the characters feel.
Ooh, that's good. So media language is doing double duty,
Exactly.
creating a visual feast and hinting at the deeper stuff.
Spot on. Now, what about a question on representation in San Junipero?
Oh, yeah. Representation, that's a big one.
Like how the creators challenge or reinforce gender and sexuality stereotypes.
Okay, yeah, good question.
This is where those theoretical frameworks are so helpful.
Okay, so which ones?
Remember bell hooks?
Vaguely.
She argued that patriarchal power structures often limit women.
Right, limit their choices.
You could analyze how San Junipero flips that
Okay, how so?
by giving Yorkie and Kelly the freedom to choose their destinies.
Oh, right, inside the virtual world and with that decision to upload.
Exactly.
That's good. Connecting it back to Bell Hooks' ideas shows we get that wider social context of representation.
Exactly. It's not just about seeing a same-sex couple. It's about understanding how their story challenges those dominant narratives.
Right, about love, relationships, what it means to live a good life.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to bring in other theorists, too.
Like who?
Well, Judith Butler's concept of gender performativity, that's really relevant here.
Okay, yeah, I see that.
Think about how Yorkie and Kelly present themselves in San Junipero.
Their clothes, their style,
Are they conforming to society's expectations?
or are they making their own rules?
Exactly. These are the questions that'll impress those examiners.
I'm starting to see how it all fits together. It's like building a case, piece by piece,
You got it.
using specific examples to back up our arguments.
Exactly. And that's what will showcase your understanding of media studies.
Okay, that makes sense, but what about those questions about the audience?
The audience.
They always feel tricky, like, how do we know what's going on in other people's heads?
Right. Well, this is where understanding different audience theories is so helpful.
Okay, so which ones are we thinking about here?
Remember Stuart Hall's reception theory?
Kind of. Remind me.
He said media texts are polysemic. They have multiple meanings.
Right, okay.
Different audiences will understand them in different ways.
Based on their own experiences?
Exactly.
So it's not about finding the right interpretation?
Yeah.
It's about acknowledging that there are lots of valid readings.
Exactly. Especially for a show like Black Mirror.
Yeah, it's meant to make you think, spark debate.
Right. Think about San Junipero specifically.
Okay.
How might a younger viewer see it differently from an older viewer?
Oh, interesting.
Or someone who's lost someone, how might they react to the idea of uploading consciousness?
That's deep.
These questions can help you show you understand how audience factors affect things.
Okay, this is making me realize that revising for media studies, it's not just about memorizing stuff.
No, definitely not.
It's about, like, developing those critical thinking muscles,
Exact.
seeing the world through different lenses.
Absolutely.
But let's be real, some of these theories can feel a bit abstract.
They can.
How do we make sure we're not just throwing around jargon?
That's a good point. The key is to understand the theory and be able to apply it.
Right, use it.
Think of it like learning a language. You wouldn't just memorize vocab words.
No.
You'd practice using them in sentences, conversations, stories.
Right, you'd actually use the language.
It's the same with media studies theory. Don't just name drop theorists.
Yeah.
Explain their ideas and then show how those ideas are reflected in the media.
I love that analogy. So the theory is the grammar,
Right.
and the media examples are the vocabulary.
You got it.
We need both to communicate effectively. But speaking of communication, what about the media industry?
Ah, yes, the business side.
What kind of exam questions might we see there?
You might be asked about institutions like Netflix,
Okay, yeah.
the impact of technology on production, the economics of what we see on screen.
Right, the money behind it all.
Remember Hesmondhalgh?
Vaguely.
He argued that media is shaped by this mix of creativity, economics, and tech.
So it's not just about the artists.
Right.
It's about the whole system.
The money people, the marketers, the tech wizards.
All those behind-the-scenes folks.
Exactly. And when you're analyzing the media industry for exams, it's important to think about how those forces work together.
Oh, okay, I see.
For example, you could talk about how Netflix, being global, being subscription-based,
Yeah,
allows them to take more risks than traditional broadcasters.
that's true. It explains why we're seeing such diverse stuff on streaming platforms.
Exactly.
Everything from blockbusters to indie films to, like, those quirky reality shows.
Right, stuff that wouldn't have made it onto regular TV.
It's like the playing field is leveled.
Absolutely. It gives creators more freedom.
More freedom to tell their stories.
And that shift changes things.
Yeah, it does.
The types of stories, the voices we hear, the perspectives on screen.
That's huge.
It's constantly changing, which makes studying the media industry so interesting.
It really does. Any advice on those media industry questions?
Remember, examiners want to see critical thinking.
Okay.
Don't just repeat facts about companies or tech, analyze their impact.
Right, the so what?
Exactly. How do they shape creativity? How do they affect the audience? What are the ethical implications?
Oh, I see, those deeper questions.
Those are the things that will show you really get it.
Okay. Media language, representation, audience, media industry, and now.
Media context.
Media context, the final piece.
Right, the final piece of the puzzle.
This one feels a bit slippery sometimes, you know?
I get it. Media context can feel abstract.
It does.
It's about understanding that bigger picture, the social, historical, cultural forces.
Right, how all that shapes how we see the world.
And how we understand media.
Right.
But don't worry, we'll break it down.
Okay, good.
Remember San Junipero?
Of course.
We talked about how it reflects the 2016 climate, especially LGBTQ plus rights.
Yeah.
That's media context in action.
So it's not just what's on screen.
Right.
It's understanding the world behind the screen.
Exactly.
The things that influence the creators.
When you're analyzing media context in your exams, think about those connections.
Okay, the connections.
How does the social and political landscape affect representation?
Yeah.
How does technology change how we consume media? What values are reflected in what we watch?
It's like we're putting on special glasses
Exactly.
to see those hidden layers.
And remember, media context is always changing.
Wow, things change.
What was groundbreaking in 2016 might be normal today.
That's true.
So stay engaged with the world. Be aware of those shifting norms and values.
I'm feeling like a media studies detective.
Okay, key takeaway about media context for exams.
Don't just focus on the text itself.
Okay.
Zoom out. Consider the historical moment, the social and political climate, the technology, the culture.
Right, the whole picture.
By understanding that media context, you'll understand the meaning and impact better.
I love that. All right, media detectives, we're back. Final act of our A-level media studies deep dive.
Time to sharpen those exam skills.
Yeah, get you feeling like total media masterminds ready for those exams.
Absolutely. We've explored those key areas: media language, representation, audience, industry, media context.
It's a lot. But now, how do we actually use all this in the exam room?
It's one thing to know the concepts, but another to apply them effectively.
Right, that's what we need to do, right? Actually
Yeah.
apply it. So let's get practical, talk tips, strategies, all those things to help you ace those assessments.
Okay, sounds good. Let's start with the basics, like exam technique.
Time management is crucial.
Oh yeah, time management.
This exams, they're marathons, not sprints.
I feel that.
You've got to allocate enough time for each question,
Yeah, you don't want to run out of time.
especially those longer essay-style responses.
Right, those ones where you really have to get into it.
Don't get so caught up in one tiny detail from San Junipero that you forget to talk about, say, the impact of Netflix.
Oh yeah, totally. Got to think big picture sometimes too.
It's about pacing yourself, making sure you cover all those key areas.
Okay, so before we even start writing, is it worth taking a few minutes to plan?
Planning, absolutely.
See, good.
Even just a quick outline can help you structure your thoughts, organize your evidence.
So you're not just rambling.
Exactly, and make sure you're hitting all the points the question is asking for.
Right, hitting all the points, that's key. Okay, planning, check.
Check. Now, those theoretical frameworks we've talked about,
Yeah, all those theorists.
Steve Neale, Bell Hooks, Stuart Hall, Judith Butler.
How do we actually use them in our answers without just like name dropping?
Think of theories as different lenses, you know?
Okay, different lenses.
Each one gives you a unique perspective, helps you dig deeper.
So it's not just about throwing those names around.
Definitely not. Explain the theory, connect it to the text you're analyzing.
And use examples.
Specific examples.
So don't just say, this episode reflects Judith Butler's concept of gender performativity.
Right.
We have to actually explain what that means and show how it's happening in St. Junipero.
Exactly. You could say something like, the characters in San Junipero challenge traditional gender norms by choosing how they express themselves in the virtual world.
Yeah, and then connect it back.
Which aligns with Butler's idea that gender is a performance, not some inherent quality.
Oh, I see. So it's like we're giving those extra layers of depth.
Absolutely.
More nuance, more insight.
Exactly. What about those terminology questions?
Ugh, terminology. Sometimes I feel lost in all the jargon.
The key is to familiarize yourself with those key terms. Understand what they actually mean.
Right. Not just memorize.
Flashcards, mind maps, online quizzes, whatever works for you.
It's like learning a new language.
The more you practice, the more fluent you become.
So making those terms work for us, not against us.
Exactly. We've talked a lot about analyzing shows like San Junipero.
Yeah, individual text.
But what about those broader questions about the media industry or media context?
Oh, yeah, those big picture questions.
How do we approach those?
Good question.
They often require you to connect different ideas.
So not just focusing on one little thing.
For example, imagine a question about the impact of streaming on the global media landscape.
Okay, yeah.
This is where your knowledge of media industries comes in.
Right. Thinking about those big institutions like Netflix.
Exactly. The economic factors, the influence of technology.
So it's like building a bridge.
A bridge between those micro-analyses of individual texts.
And those macro-level discussions.
About the whole media world.
Wow, okay, I see that connection. That's cool.
And remember, examiners love to see critical thinking.
Oh, yeah, critical thinking, that's always key.
Don't just state the obvious, challenge assumptions, offer different perspectives.
Right. Show them you're really thinking.
And always back up your points with solid evidence.
Evidence from the text. Evidence from the world.
Exactly. It's not just about showing what you know.
Right.
It's about showing how you think.
Using our analytical skills to understand those media messages, their impact.
Maybe even imagine a better media landscape for the future.
I love that. Okay, one last piece of advice as we wrap up.
Stay curious.
I like that.
Media studies is about exploring, questioning, engaging in those crucial conversations.
About representation, about power.
About media shaping our lives.
That's inspiring. So, final thought for our listeners.
Remember, media studies isn't just about an exam. It's about developing critical thinking skills, and those will help you in all parts of your life.
That's a great point. Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into A-level media studies.
We have.
5 key areas unpacked, tons of examples explored.
And hopefully you're feeling more confident about those exams.
Absolutely. So, to all our listeners out there, remember, keep those media brains buzzing.
Never stop questioning the world around you.
And good luck with those exams.